So, this is part 3 of my fallen or our fallen mediocre club series. So let me quickly just, drum roll the announcement. This week we are looking at the Hunter Mariners.
Oh, yes. I love it. First of all, I haven't looked at that logo like this for a while. What is going on there? That is...
And why the Mariners? Newcastle's like a industrial city. It's got the steelworks there, and I guess Steelers was already taken, wasn't it, at that
This
time?
was already taken by Illawarra, and that's fine. You don't have to name... But why the Mariners? Do we think of Newcastle and we just think of, burly sailors and stand next to the big wheel? And I don't know. I just feel
I don't know why. I had the answer for the Crushers, but I don't know why they're the Mariners, and I don't know why they were the Reds, but that was their name. So let me, I've written almost a script here, Dubs. This should be pretty professional. So,
all right.
No club's story probably embodies how divisive and bitter the Super League war was than the Hunter Mariners and what went on in Newcastle in 1995. So basically the history of the club began only a few weeks after the Newcastle Knights announced their loyalty to the ARL in 1995 when the whole Super League war was kicking off. So Super League and News Limited, and within weeks of that announcement, announced that they would be creating a team for their competition in Newcastle because the Hunter region was seen as a key battleground during the Super League war. It was a key market, so they had to have a team there in Newcastle. The team name was decided on the Hunter Mariners, and they were able to sign up a lot of young talent that wasn't snapped up or wasn't getting much game time at the Knights at the time. So a lot of your reserve grade players or players that were sort of on the fringe. They saw the Mariners as an opportunity to basically be in the first squad. But as most of the Newcastle Knights players signed with the ARL. So as I said at the start, what went on in Newcastle was quite, it embodied what the Super League war was about. It was really bitter, it was really toxic, and there was so much hatred in that city towards the Mariners. So I've got a few quotes here. This is from the Sydney Morning. This is from an old website, rl1908.com. So this is a quote. The Sydney Morning Herald described the club before its 1997 debut as the most unpopular in the history of rugby league. Where was another quote here? So the reason why they were so unpopular was because obviously they saw the ARL and the Newcastle Knights as this is our team. How dare this foreign competition, this money, this corporate shill of a Hunter Mariners come to our city. And, Newcastle's a very working class sort of town. And so they really banded together. I guess you can look at it as an angry mob, but I like to see it as more of a positive. They're really sticking by their team. So initially, the Newcastle West Leagues Club, which is the biggest leagues club in Newcastle at the time, were going to finance the Mariners. And this was not taken very well with their members. So there was a meeting called where 5,000 members showed up and they overwhelmingly voted down the idea. The guy who was president of the West Leagues Club at the time, Bob Ferris, eventually left Wests to become the Hunter CEO because he sort of pledged allegiance there, and therefore News Limited had to prop up the Mariners. Interestingly, now though, the Wests Leagues Club owns the Newcastle Knights. So it's funny how sort of things come around like that. Okay, they were hated from the get-go. So here's a quote from a journalist from NRL.com, Brett Keeble. The Hunter Mariners was despised, probably the most unpopular team in the history of rugby league. The whole thing became so nasty, you had some of the Mariners executives going around town with bodyguards because of death threats. And here's another quote from Brett Comorley, who actually played for the Mariners. I'll touch on the Melbourne Storm players there a bit later. I thought if they were in Newcastle, I'd sign for the Mariners, and that gives me a great opportunity to never leave Newcastle. However, the offices got vandalised a few times. It was so obviously everyone showing their allegiances to the Knights and the very anti-Hunter Mariners. So they were very hated. And there was a group started actually called Aussies for ARL by a lady called Barbara Davis, who would become the first ever female on the Knights board. Basically, Aussies for ARL's sole purpose was to make life hell for the Mariners. They would lobby local governments to block anything the Mariners want to do, like they wanted to fly like banners down some main street in Newcastle promoting their club. They were able to block that. They were able to successfully lobby the local government. It went to court actually, but they were blocked playing out of, Marathon Stadium. I don't know what it's called now, but I always knew it as Marathon Stadium. Basically, where the Knights play now, where they've always played. And then the Mariners, they ended up playing at Topper Stadium. Do you remember Topper Stadium, Dubs?
Vaguely.
It's where the Newcastle used to be called Breakers Stadium. So it's where
the Newcastle Breakers ground. Yeah.
Yeah, the old NSL club, Newcastle Breakers. So they played there, and the basically Aussies for ARL, I believe, threatened the Newcastle Breakers, saying that if they let the Mariners play there, they would actively get all the rugby league / Newcastle Knights fans to boycott the Newcastle Breakers games. This didn't really seem to upset the Breakers too much, because I felt they probably felt they're only losing maybe 3 or 4 guys. So they allowed Topper Stadium to be used for the Mariners. They were meant to play, obviously, in 1996, but then there was the famous court case in 96, so then they had to, that set off the back burners. Eventually, when Super League got the green light, they played in 1997. They finished 6th in the 10-team comp. They just missed the finals. The finals were top 5 that year. They averaged about 5,000 to 6,000 fans, which, I mean, is pretty bad, but considering all the sort of hatred that was, like, you know, those groups actively lobbying against them all the time, everything, it's actually not too bad, in my opinion, considering the Knights, you know, they were getting about 15,000 to 20,000 at a games. But the biggest triumph was when they almost took out the 1997 World Club Challenge, where they lost 32-12 to the Broncos in the final. So back then, I think I mentioned this in another episode, the World Club Challenge, all the Super League clubs in Australia and the teams in Britain played off during the year, and they had like a finals sort of thing. The most famous win was a come-from-behind win against Wigan in England in the quarterfinals of the World Club Challenge. Eventually, they were wound up as a peace deal when, you know, Super League and the ARL came together to make the NRL. It was seen that ARL got Newcastle and News Limited got Melbourne, so then there was no room for the Hunter Mariners, although there was talk about merging them with the Gold Coast. Now, this was another interesting quote from the Rugby League, that RL 1908. So the Newcastle Knights, as you know, won the 1997 ARL comp. And as we said, the Mariners lost that World Club Challenge. This is the quote. Who knows what effect the Mariners winning the WCC and the $1 million prize money would have had on peace talks in their long-term future. The Knights were on the verge of collapse in the weeks leading up to the ARL Grand Final. If Newcastle had lost and the Mariners had won, the financial status of each club would have been markedly different. News Limited may have been reluctant to turn their back on their World Club Challenge champions. So, interesting there. Imagine if a turn of events there, Newcastle lose the ARL Grand Final and the Mariners win the World Club Challenge, and all of a sudden, you know, who knows, Dubs, maybe it would be, they would have merged, or maybe the Mariners would still be around. So
who knows?
Now, the Melbourne Storm link, very, very strong Melbourne Storm link. So our 98 squad, we got Scott Hill, Paul Marquette, Robbie Ross, Richard Swain, John Carlaw, and Brett Kamali, all out of that Mariners squad. So our spine for that 1999 Grand Final basically came from the Hunter Mariners. One other interesting thing I wanted to add was Robbie Ross. So there was this good article about a month ago on the NRL website with Robbie Ross. He talked about his whole career, but he talked about the Mariners. So Robbie Ross was actually, I think he was either the first or second behind Glenn Lazarus, Melbourne Storm players signed. And basically Chris Johns, who was the Melbourne Storm, I don't know what his position was, but he was basically in
CEO initially, wasn't he?
Something like that, but he put the team together. He basically told Robbie Ross to go up to Newcastle and poach as many players as he could. So this is a quote from Robbie Ross in his time from the Hunter Mariners and basically Melbourne Storm. So it was one of my favourite years by far, that Hunter Mariners year. We were flying around the world, playing games in Paris, in England, went to Auckland and played in the final. We were all flying around business class. We knew it wasn't going to be sustainable, but we had a hell of a ride that year. And this is about the formations of the Storm. So Chris Johns, said to me, can you do me a favour? Go up and see if you can get the Mariners boys on board. So he flew me up to Newcastle. I asked to meet me at the Cricketers' Arms, and they were all there. Hilly, Paul Marquette, Swaney, and John Carlo. There might have been one or two more. I think he's missing out Brett Kamali there.
Yeah, just the Clive Churchill medal winner, but go on.
Yeah. I was walking in and I remember Michael Hayden, who was the Mariners public relations manager at the time, standing at the north side. He said, "What are you doing there?" I said, "I'm just having a chat to the boys." He said, "You're not taking them, mate. They're staying in Newcastle." I said, "I've all signed with News Limited. They have to go to a News Limited team." I had a chat to them anyway, told them what it was like down there, what the vision was. At the end of the day, they were all signed with News Limited, so they had to go to the News Limited club. Interesting stuff too, because obviously we were News Storm, we were News Limited, so we could only, because some of the players who signed those Super League contracts, they weren't for one season, they were for several years. So yeah, interesting things, interesting stuff. So let's just quickly look at the photos here. So Mariners logo, there was a team shot. See if you can spot the Storm players. There's Brett Kamali, young Brett.
That head is unmistakable.
That was Graham Murray on the right. He was their coach.
No, not Muppet. Sorry, Mark Murray was Muppet. Graham Murray.
Yeah, and that's Hagan on the left, who went on to actually coach the Knightsville Premiership. There's Paul Marquette with the electrical tape.
Yep, that very unmistakable noggin.
Yep. And Willie Mason, he didn't play a first grade game from him, but he played in the juniors. So Willie Mason played a season at the Hunter Mariners. Interesting. Nice. Yeah. There's their cheerleaders. They're not much. There's Kamali again. It's all Brett Kamali. Kamali with maybe two of their fans, with their big supporter base. And this was from 2016, just a random Hunter Mariners jersey at a St. George game. So the Mariners live on in spirit. So that's the Hunter Mariners, Dubs, the most hated team in rugby league that almost became world champions.
Almost champions.